Great. Well, it's a big week. Excited to get back on the field. Not that we were on the field last week, but we were really in direct competition in preparation for Clemson here. It's exciting to have our first ACC game. Clemson has a great program. I have ton of respect for Coach Sweeney, his staff, the players, the program they've run there. Had a lot of guys from Clemson through the years, and it's really those guys are tough. They love football, and they do it the right way. So a lot of respect for them. We're excited to get going. I think we made some improvements last week that we needed to make and kind of reset a few things. Hopefully that'll show up this week. But it's a good football team that we're prepared for. And, they've lost a couple of tough games, but they're obviously got a lot of talent. Got some very explosive players on both sides of the ball, and a very experienced team as well. So they definitely know what they're doing. Turnovers have hurt them in a couple of those losses, probably all of them. A couple plays here or there, just DPs at before now. So we need to play. We need to play a solid game all the way around. That's what we're getting ready to do. And excited to prepare for these guys and be ready to go on Saturday. 12 o'clock kickoff, so get up and go game. Be a little different timing for us on the start, but we're excited and look forward to all of it.
You start right here on the right, Coach.
Hey Coach, Noah White's Talking 24/7. Now that you've had about 4 weeks here, or 4 games, to look at Gio, see what he's done on the field and assess his game, what have you seen out of him and areas that he needs to improve, and then any update on his health?
Well, we'll see how what he's able to do today. He didn't do much last week, but he's been in there every day working hard, getting treatment, and we'll see where he's at today. I'd say really, specifically, for each player, it's all going to be kind of about the same. There are things that the guys are doing well, need to be more consistent at. There are certainly things that we all can do better, coaches, players, head coach, coordinators, play callers, everybody. So, we've taken a good look at where we're at, what we need to improve in. What will help us the most? There's a lot of things we need to improve in, but what will help us the most? And we've dedicated time, energy, and practice time to those things, and to try to improve them. In some cases, change them. In some cases, throw them out and move to something that we feel like will be a little bit more productive. It just maybe isn't working out well for us. So it's a little bit of all those. But for any specific player, at 4 games, there's certainly things that guys are doing well. We're doing things better than we did 4 weeks ago. There's certainly still a lot of room for improvement. That's what we want to try to focus on last week and then carry that up to this week.
On the far right, Coach.
Hey Coach, Michael Code, WCHL, chapelrow.com. With the timing of this bye week, or at least the first one, after the 4 non-conference now, every game for the rest of the year is ACC. Are you sort of viewing this as the start of a new season or mini season at the very least?
Yeah, well, we can only worry about one game at a time, so our focus is on Clemson, and we'll deal with the rest of the schedule when we come to it. But again, it's a little bit of a reset. The end of training camp was one time, and now, as you said, we've had 4 games, all out of conference games, and played a couple away, a couple at home. We've had a multitude of experiences, and we've kind of recalibrated on that, and as I said, reset a little bit on things that we need to do more of, things we need to do less of, things we need to improve. So it's kind of what I've always done. This is kind of great, but after a third of the season, it's probably about the right time for all of us.
Bill, how many more reps do you think Max, or you plan on Max getting this week with the ones, and maybe he got leading up to UCF, or is it completely contingent on what you see from Gio today?
I don't know what I'm going to see from Gio, so that's a tough question to answer. But Max is getting reps. All 3 quarterbacks are. We'll see how all that plays out, and we'll see what Gio's availability is as we go through the week. But we haven't practiced since. We had a kind of a situational practice on Thursday. We haven't really practiced since Wednesday. So from Wednesday to Tuesday, a lot of times elapsed here. We'll see where Gio is today.
second question is, you said you made some progress in a couple of areas last week. Can you specifically tell us what some of those areas were?
You know, a lot of fundamental areas. You know, and really all of them, whether it's man coverage, zone coverage, pass blocking, pass rush, double team blocks, you know, crack blocks, perimeter force. You know, you name it. We addressed all the things that are, you know, foundational to not just one play, but maybe carry over into a segment of plays or calls, and worked on those. Same thing in the kicking game. You know, addressed each area and kind of you know, calibrated on punt return, kickoff return. You know, address some areas that haven't been as good as we wanted to be. Looked at other areas that are, I think, going pretty good. Those parts of certain plays and said, okay, we need to do those, continue to do those well, and improve in the areas that, you know, we are still not really executing as well as we need to. Made some changes in some of the, made some adjustments in some of the things we were doing. So we'll see how all that comes together. It's a combination of all those things, not just one thing.
Shelby Spencer with the News Observer. You were talking some at the radio show last night just about the O-line and obviously some of the injuries that you guys experienced there in the off season. I'm curious, just with now Lasky kind of returning and obviously was playing more, you know, like left tackle with UCF, but if you could take us through the process of just how you kind of adapt to the offensive line with some of the injuries, and then what we can expect in terms of Lasky maybe staying a left tackle or moving and taking over for Chad Lindbergh at center.
Yeah, well, we'll just have to see how all that plays out. I think ultimately, you know, the conversation comes down to getting your 5 best players on the field, but also playing the best combination. The 5 players who in combination play the most effectively. So it's kind of in baseball. It's hard to have 2 catchers. You know, than maybe your 2 best players. So we have to kind of balance out what's our best line versus trying to get our best players on the field. And with Lasky, you know, he's awesome because he can really play every position. He's played center, guard, both tackle spots. So he gives us a lot of flexibility. And I think it will help us, you know, find the rest of the line and consistency with it. So, but you know, Moore and King have done, you know, pretty solid job on the right side, and so we'll just kind of work through the rest of it here. But having Austin back has been a big, you know, it was a big lift for us, and obviously he hasn't played in several weeks, and Central Florida game was, you know, a quick turnaround for him. But I thought he handled himself pretty well, and I'm sure he looked better last week. I'm sure he'll get better as he gets more reps out there and just have to figure out what the best combination is. But that'll be out of that.
Yeah, a quick follow-up if I can. Just how would you evaluate the O-line performance so far? What are some of the areas of growth?
Well, yeah, unfortunately, we've had a lot of moving parts on the offensive line. You know, we took a player who had never played center, essentially moved him into center, and so Chad's been at center since the middle of training camp, but that was a new position for him. And you know, kind of worked through the tackle situation with, you know, several players, Buchanan, to Boo, to Lasky, and so forth. So we'll see if we can settle in on we have settled in on more consistency with our, you know, who are getting the reps, and there's more consistency with those players. And it's not just the individual player, it's who you play next to and how you work in conjunction with that player or even the adjacent player after him. You know, the center, guard, and tackle a lot of times are working together in 3-man combinations of some sort. It's not just the guard and tackle or the center and guard, it could be, you know, more than that. So again, that's all, we're getting better at all that, but unfortunately, players we had in the spring on the offensive line aren't the same players we've had in the fall. And then in training camp, we've had a little bit of juggling there too. But I mean, it is what it is. And I think Chad's done a good job of taking advantage of the opportunity to play center. And you know, he's actually played, you know, pretty competitively in there for somebody who hasn't done it. So, you know, that's been it's an opportunity for him to take advantage of it. So it's encouraging for him.
Far left coach, front row.
Adam Smith, Inside Carolina. Bill, I appreciate the 2 catchers reference, by the way. Wanted to ask you about, as you all took a look at everything on the bye and with the offense, did you guys discuss maybe making a quarterback change? Do you think that could, I don't know, maybe boost some of the areas on offense where you've struggled?
Yeah, well, look, we have two experienced quarterbacks and two freshmen, so, the two experienced quarterbacks are ahead of the freshmen at this point. But I'd say those freshmen are gaining ground and they're making improvement on a steady basis as well, so. Gio wasn't able to practice last week, so we practiced with the guys that we have, and, we'll see how that goes today and, figure it out for this coming game, but, look, Gio's improved a lot, and offensively, again, we just haven't been consistent enough in any area. But we're getting closer, and so we'll, continue to push ahead on that. And when Gio's able to practice, we'll see how much improvement he, has made and can make. If he's not, then others will be in.
Yep, Jeremiah Holloway with South Carolina. Bill, I know over the last, maybe 1 or 2 weeks, a couple guys have, departed from the team and things like that. Can you kind of shed light, I guess, on, where there's some, common threads on maybe some of those decisions
Sure.
and just what those conversations were like?
Yeah, it was really personal reasons with all three players, which I'm not comfortable talking about. But it was personal situations, 2 of them kind of health related.
Yep. And then I guess how you kind of compensate from a depth perspective of, having, just some losses and just getting guys to fill in.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think, anytime a player makes a decision to, for personal reasons to not play, that's probably the right decision, not one that, not one for me to try to talk him out of because there are other factors at work in some cases, a lot deeper than what I'm qualified to even talk about, so, or shed light on. So that's really up to them. Players that get injured, coming back and so forth, that's part of, say, kind of a normal process, but, players that have other things going on, which unfortunately is part of it, whether it's health, family, so forth, and that's, those things they have to make decisions on. And I think probably every team has 1 or 2 players in that category somewhere along the line. At least I would say that was true for me in the NFL, in a different way, but kind of the same thing. There are other things in life that eventually, for some people, have to overtake football as a priority. So it's those choices.
Left, second row.
Hey, Coach. We've known that you've built a great rapport with Dabo over the years. What's your relationship like with him, and how does it feel to finally coach against him?
Well, I mean, my relationship with Dabo is great. Saturday afternoon, we're on opposite sides of the field, so it is what it is. And I'll do everything I can to help my team. I'm sure he'll do everything he can to help his. But in the end, I would just say, I think Dabo's done a great job with that program. I have a ton of respect for not only what he's accomplished on the field and his record and all that, but the way he's done it, the players that he's turned out. You can tell that they've come from a program that's very well run and turns out men. And I've dealt with a number of guys, certainly not all of them by any stretch, but I've dealt with a number of them that have come from his leadership and his program. And I've talked to them about what they do, and they're very complimentary of what their experience was at Clemson, and I can see why. And those people represent the school and the program very well. So ton of respect for Dabo, a ton of respect for Clemson, and all the other people that go with it. I mean, it's more than obviously just him, but clearly he provides a lot of leadership there.
2 more to finish left, back, and then finish up with Brian.
Aaron Beard, the AP, sort of to follow up on that. Dabo was saying, I think today, that he had met you a couple of times when you were in the NFL, but he talked to you more in the past year, obviously, than ever before. I'm curious, what stood out to you maybe, or what was surprising before you kind of, interacted with him and got to get a better feel for him as a peer in the ACC, compared to what you maybe knew when you were, in the NFL and he was a college coach, sending guys to the pros?
Right. Well, as an NFL head coach, talking to college coaches, whether they're head coaches or coordinators or whatever, I mean, a lot of it's personnel based. People you're thinking about drafting and how they fit into your program and so forth, things like that. At the ACC meetings in Jacksonville, we're all in there together. Dabo spoke a number of times about various issues, and I can just tell from his comments and his opinions on certain things, where he was coming from, what his beliefs are, what's important to him, and what his convictions are, and those were all pretty consistent with what I thought they would be, but to actually, you know, hear him articulate them and talk about things that he deals with, you know, as the head coach at that school. That in all honesty, I haven't had enough experience at this level to appreciate all those, was very insightful for me. And we talked about some things, you know, outside of the meetings and, you know, off camera and things like that. But he's been very, let's say, helpful, you know, a couple of things that I've asked him about, just, you know, in general. And I appreciate his, you know, his openness and willingness to, you know, try to give me some advice that I've asked for.
Last one here.
Yeah, Brian Murphy, WRL. Last week, the chancellor and the board chairman talked about patience in evaluating this football program. Last night, Michael Lombardi talked about bringing in 40 new players next year, many of them from high school, kind of rebuilding or building through high school. That kind of leads at least some to think this is a 2 or 3 year project. In your mind, is that how long it's going to take? And do you see this as a rebuild at this point?
Well, I mean, we don't have very many players that were here when we got here. And there are only a handful that are playing that were recruited here. So, I mean, it's what it is. I don't look at it as anything other than I'm going to do the best I can to coach the team today, help the team prepare for Clemson and play well on Saturday. And at the same time, recruit and build the team for next year through the high school opportunities that we have now. There'll be a portal that will occur later on, but again, that's very vague at this point because nobody knows it's in the portal or, you know, so forth. So that's really a bridge to cross at another time. But we've recruited a lot of high school players that, you know, I think would fit in our program here. And the numbers are high because the low numbers from the previous 2 years, you know, line for that. So time frame, expectations, all that. I mean, I don't have any conversation about that. I'm just going to do the best I can for this team at this point in time, and at the same time, we're going to recruit and try to bring in high school players that will really be the foundation of the team. But eventually, once your program's established, then I think whether it's pro free agency or college transfer portals, you supplement your team with players in those areas that can help the team because you have a certain need or opportunity to improve your team through those acquisitions. And so that's, you know, the way that they would generally be used for. I don't think you can really build a team through free agency or transfers. But you can improve your team, and there are good players to be had there. So I mean, I'm not saying that, but as far as establishing a program with guys that have, you know, not even been here a full year, and then do the same thing again next year, do the same thing year after that. It's not really establishing a program. You need to have, you know, kids come in at the beginning, go all the way through, and be able to build and grow and be foundational for the next group that comes in behind them.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, Bill.
Great.
Thank
All
you.
right, thank you.
Coach.
Appreciate it. Thanks.